Hello, everyone. I'm Lenore French, one of the co-founders, along with Sunny Bach, who's hiding somewhere here. We are the two co-founders of your host organization, the Venice Vista Arts Coalition, also fondly known as VMAC. We're a coalition of nearly 30 arts nonprofits, cultural institutions, and individual artists on the west side of LA. And we formed VMAC to do exactly what we're about to do tonight, which is to try and find ways to keep art and artists going strong on the west side of Los Angeles, even in the face of gentrification and, yes, a pandemic. So just a couple of notes before we begin about the format of tonight's workshop. To keep things moving, your audio has been muted. We'd like to ask if you have questions to please post them in the chat, and be sure your question that you select the everyone to make sure your question everyone can see it. Cody will answer your questions at the end of the evening's program. And I also wanted to let everyone know that we will be recording tonight's session, and it will be posted on the Venice Mar Vista Arts Coalition's YouTube channel, which I will shortly link in the chat. And if you'd like to join our organization, please DM us on our Facebook page, which will also be linked in the chat. And now I'd like to have you join me in giving our host and wonderful teacher, workshop leader tonight, Cody Mergliano, a very warm welcome. Cody is a social worker who works at the Actors Fund in Hollywood. She is their intake and housing social worker in the Entertainment Assistance Program, working with those all the way from 18 to 64. In addition, Cody also runs the supportive therapy group several times a year and provides about 4 of these workshops, these seminars, such as tonight's seminar about affordable housing. She does about 4 of them a year to help others understand and sort of deconstruct the Byzantine seeming affordable housing prices and how-tos. So now I'm gonna turn the microphone over to Cody, and take it away, Cody.
Thank you so much, Lenore. As Lenore said, my name is Cody. I'm a social worker at the Actors Fund. For anyone not familiar with the Actors Fund, we are a nonprofit social services organization. We provide a lot of different services, from social services. One of our big branches is our Housing Resource Center. And so what that really consists of is primarily education and resource sharing through Housing Resource Center, or what we call HRC. This is part of what we do, is by providing these affordable housing presentations. This is a lot of education tonight, and primarily it's hopeful to get the education to everyone interested to increase your chances of successfully getting affordable housing. So just to take a look at a seminar outline tonight, we're going to do a little bit of history on the affordable housing, review the rent and income eligibility, and then we'll talk about preparing to apply, assessing your income, what that looks like, what documents you might want to have on hand and know how to access. We will also take a look at resources and tips. This is primarily where I will share with everyone different links, the developer links that I would definitely be checking out on a maybe once or twice a month to stay up to date. And then we'll profile a few opportunities. And then following that, we have Linda Lux from Venice Community Housing, and she will be also discussing a specific property once we get through that. So that's a little bit of the outline tonight. So we will just go ahead and dive right in. So just to kind of get a little bit of a history of the affordable housing in the US. So really, after the stock market crash, the Great Depression in the late 20s, affordable housing really grew out of the FDR New Deal programs, which passed the Housing Acts. And this really paved the way for public affordable housing. And so this would be federally assisted housing in the US. And this was again created out of the New Deal and the Housing Act in the 30s and 40s. And really, the passing of the Housing Act paved the way for the creation of public housing, which was administered by the city housing authorities and funded by the federal government's housing agencies. If you've heard of it, HUD is that housing agency. And so this worked really well up until about the 70s. That is when the government stopped building public housing, and kind of a different way of developing housing took place. And so, as I mentioned, in the 70s, the government stops building public housing. But what happened is they started to develop these public-private partnerships to create largely mixed income housing. And so we went from a system where where we had one type of housing system to we have several different programs. And so it does get a little difficult to navigate because there's so many different programs. You have to go to several different locations. There's not one access point. In New York, they have the New York City Housing Connect. It's this one access point to access affordable housing in that city. In LA, it's different than that. And so part of tonight's seminars to really show everyone where to start to access that different information on how to find and locate affordable housing. So there's a lot of different programs. The one thing in common with all the programs is they're going to be based on your annual household income. So when we're talking about subsidized or affordable housing, we're going to need to be income qualifying. And I will go over what that means in a moment, but that's kind of the common thread. So we'll spend some time on what that means as far as annual household income and what income qualifying looks like. So just to kind of get started, right, let's just ask, what is affordable housing? So the government is defining affordable housing if a family spends no more than 30% of their income to live there. Every time I say this, I'm usually never alone in the fact that I'm not the only one who does spend more than 30% of my monthly income on housing. And just another way to look at this would be affordable housing would be your rent and utilities should be 30% of your income, and everything else should be, right, food, clothing, if you have childcare, your cell phone, any sort of other expense should be that 70%. But as we know, usually a lot of us are spending more than 30% on housing. And so, right, there's definitely a need for affordable housing, especially in Los Angeles and California. So to give an idea of just a little bit of the history of the rent burden this is for the County of Los Angeles. In 2015, on that far right top statistic, we can see that about 55% of all renter households were rent burdened. And so what that means is that those households are paying more than 30% of their income. And so we can see that, again, a good portion of renters are in that category of rent burdened. When we look at that very bottom right number here, this almost 29%, this is what this is telling us is that 29% of renter households are severely rent burdened. And this means that those households are paying more than half of their income toward housing alone. And so that doesn't leave a lot of room for other expenses, right? Food, just again, what I mentioned earlier. And so part of this is really just, this is an ongoing issue. This isn't a new issue. And the hope is that the more that we can spread the word, how to access affordable housing, hopefully that we can have less who are severely rent burdened moving forward. That would be ideal. So to go over some of the housing challenges in LA, after the housing collapse in 2008, Los Angeles did have one of the highest rates of foreclosure in the nation. And we saw this just, back in 2008, this was definitely a very big problem. We had a lot of people who were losing their homes and needed to find another place to live. One of the reasons was the median household income decreased by about 4%, while the rents rose about 11% between 2006 and 2013. So housing got exponentially more expensive, but the income of those living in the homes did not increase, it actually decreased. And so we can see where the problem began to happen and where that continues to happen. So The other data that I showed previously on that slide was 2015. What we know is we have a little bit more of an updated number, was that from 2018, 61% of LA residents do pay more than 30% of their monthly income for housing costs. So that means that over 60% are rent burdened, which again is not something that is great. It doesn't help for people needing or wanting to stay in Los Angeles. It really causes a problem to where now we're working just to pay rent, and that doesn't leave any room for savings for other things. Again, necessities, if you have children, families, it really takes a toll on the household. We also saw just a few years back, 2015 to 2017, there was a 33% increase in homelessness in LA County. And this does include those who may be couch surfing or living in their cars. We do see a lot of people who live in their cars. There's a lot of great programs to help with that, but also there's such a huge increase in this, which doesn't come to a surprise when we know that the rents are rising and income is just not keeping up with the rising rents. So a few things that have happened as far as how to help with the problem to get it started. On January 1st of this year, the Assembly Bill 1482 did pass, and this limits the yearly rent increase at 5% plus inflation for the next 10 years. So this is applying to current rent controlled apartments. And so hopefully this means, right, that your rent would not increase past a certain percentage while you're living in a rent controlled apartment. And if you need to know if your apartment is rent controlled, I will share that resource later on in the presentation for the rent stabilization ordinance. What this Assembly bill also means is that landlords cannot evict a tenant without documents of a lease violation if the renter has lived in that place for 12 or more months. And so this is really helpful because if your landlord doesn't like you, if there's just an issue, they do need clear and documented evidence that you violated the lease in order to evict you out of the apartment. So this does help for anyone who is in those situations. In addition, the Los Angeles County does have a housing plan. It's a 5-year housing plan. So it began in 2018 and currently it's projected to continue to be worked on through 2022. It is a pretty ambitious housing plan. It has 3 main pillars, and this would be to increase the stock of affordable housing throughout the city, preserve the existing affordable housing, and then also prevent displacement of lower income residents. And so this, hopefully, again, this is increasing that we're building more buildings. We're able to have more affordable units throughout the city, throughout the county. So that way, again, more people are able to live in a apartment or a home that is affordable. So just to kind of show the numbers for this housing plan is that you can see between about 2010 to about 2017, there wasn't a lot of funding levels that were coming in for affordable housing, but in 2018, they started to increase. So that's just something, again, a little promising. I'm someone who does really enjoy looking at the data and the charts. And so it's a little promising to see that the funding stream has increased in 2018 when it kind of stayed pretty stagnant for quite a few years before that. So to switch gears into just some of the subsidized housing programs, I'm going to go over a little bit of public housing. We'll talk about Section 8 housing. And then what the majority of this seminar is based on is something looking at the low-income housing tax credit, or what you'll hear me talk about, LIHTC. And this is where we're going to be looking at, again, that annual household income that I mentioned earlier and how to income qualify and really what that process consists of. So to start with public housing, the public housing program provides affordable housing to, it's a little more than 6,500 families in Los Angeles throughout 14 different housing locations. So these are already built buildings, and this rent is subsidized by the federal government. So your rent is calculated based on 30% of your income or your household's income. So if you're a family of 4 and there are 2 adults, it would be the household's income, and they're going to base it on 30% of that. The good news is that right now, the public housing waitlist is open. You can apply online at the link on the screen. Or if you are just doing an internet search, if you Google HACLA public housing, it'll redirect you to that website and you can put your name on the wait list. If you are on the wait list or you put yourself on the wait list, what's going to happen is when a unit is available, you would be contacted and you have 5 days to respond. So a lot of housing is in a timely manner. So if you don't respond in those 5 days, they're going to move on to the next person on that waiting list, and you can rejoin the waiting list, but you would be rejoining at the bottom. So it's important to be sure that if you're using an email, make sure you're checking it, that you're using an address that can get mail to, because that's how they would be contacting you. And you want to make sure that you're responding in a timely manner. And I don't spend a lot of time on Section 8 solely because the Section 8 waitlist has been closed for, I believe, about 1.5 years now, if not longer. It's also closed in New York, where we have our main offices for the Actors Fund, and I don't have an indication as to when it would be open. But if you have a portable tenant-based voucher, that's a really great thing. You can actually go onto the Section 8 website and see what units would, or see what housing would accept your voucher. There's also the project-based version. So that would be where the building gets the subsidy. And that would provide a rent subsidy in the form of housing assistance to the private landlords on behalf of the families or individuals moving in there. But like I said, this is closed. It's been closed for quite a while. So I just like to share this information because it is a public housing program. But if you don't have a voucher, there's not a lot that anyone can do right now as far as getting one until that list reopens. So the bulk of where I'm going to spend our time is talking about this LIHTC program. So this is the most prolific program that we have in the United States for creating affordable housing for low-income residents. And it is a tax credit program. So the government awards tax credits to developers who allocate a specific number of units for qualifying low-income households. And that qualifying low-income households is really referring back to what we'll talk about, annual median income. And so you have to income qualify. So there are preset rates at which you cannot earn above a certain amount to qualify for a specific unit that that would be under this LIHTC program. And so developers can compete for these tax credits, and then the developers would set aside a certain number of units that would be affordable housing units. Typically, the tax credit projects have a 15-year compliance period, and it's usually often expanded another 15 years afterwards. So if you are moved into an affordable building, and you stay income qualified, it's a good chance that you can be there for quite a while, barring any other issues. So before we move into the income eligibility and rents, I just want to check the chat because I don't see it normally. And thank you, Mary. Yes, yes. All right. So for income eligibility and rents, we are really going to talk about, let's start with how is eligibility determined. So the federal government calculates income limits for affordable housing programs such as LIHTC using area median income. And if we go back to probably junior high math, right, we learn mean, median, and mode, and this is the median. And so what they're doing is they're looking at the person that earns the most amount of money in LA County, and then you have the person that earns the least amount, and the person in the middle becomes that area median income. And this is recalculated each year. They're typically released in the beginning of April each year. So we do have our 2020 AMI limits. They're also broken down by family size. And so if you're a household of one, right, your AMI percentage might be different if you're moving into a household of 3, and it would be 3 adults. And I do have some charts for that. Why this is important is that a lot of the times when you're looking at a housing application, if it's an affordable building, that has tax credits or that is using area median income to income qualify, it will tell you on that application packet what dollar amount is the maximum that your household could be earning to qualify for a specific unit. And so what that typically looks like would be this. And in no way, shape, or form does anyone need to memorize these numbers. These are publicly available. I'm happy to share the website in the chat afterwards. But what this is telling you is that if I'm a 2-person household, so let's say me and one other adult live in our household, this would be the maximum that our household could earn. And so 90%, $90,100 is that area median income for a 2-person household. That's that middle person. But if we say 70% of AMI is telling us 70% of that number for a 2-person household is going to be 63,000. And so this is a good information to know, because if you are a 1-person household and you're looking at affordable housing, this gives you an idea of if you earn $50,000, you can kind of know that you're probably not going to qualify at the 30% level, the 40% level, but you'd be qualifying closer to the 70% level. And for every affordable application that I've seen, as I mentioned, the numbers are on that application. So you can really see, do I qualify income-wise for a specific unit? And so typically what we see is that a building might have 30% units available. And what that is telling you is that, let's say for a 2-person household, my household cannot earn more than $27,030. And so that would be for a 30%. But if my household of 2 people earns 28,000, then I might qualify at the 40% level, because these are maximum. So if you're just over it, you would usually be bumped to that next level. Also with the affordable housing numbers that come out every year, they also share their monthly rents. And so this would be the max. So they can be different than this, but just to give an idea is, let's say for, again, a 2-bedroom at the 80% level, let's say that my max rent would be about $2,028. And if we go back, we can see that for a 2-person at the 80% level, my household income could not exceed $72,080. So it kind of gives us a general idea. What I would always say is check the application, check the website, check the place that you're applying for to see what units are available, what percentage they're available at, and what their range of what your min and max is that household can be earning yearly, to see if you qualify for that. So let me check the chat before we move on. All right, perfect. So preparing to apply, the most important thing is to assess your income so we understand, again, what percentage I would qualify at. And this is one of the biggest challenges for artists and other episodic workers. And so the system it's a lot more friendly to someone who earns 1 W-2 a year, because it's very easy for me to find how much I make, annualize it, and provide it to the application, to someone asking me for that information. As artists or episodic workers, it's not that clear cut. Typically, there's a lot of different 1099. Some of us might be getting paid under the table, getting paid cash. And so how do we keep track of that, or how do we really understand and assess our income? Why we're going to spend a little bit of time on this is because the federal guidelines on income limits are very strict, and the penalties for non-compliance are high. And so when when you're applying for an affordable building, typically you're going to be asked for bank statements, tax returns, information of your finances, because they're making sure that you do income qualify, because the building also would not want to have those living in, let's say, a 30% unit when they shouldn't be, because the building could get penalized for that. And so it's important to understand how our income is calculated to help understand what that total annual household income is and what and how that would relate when we're applying for affordable housing. So the way that we're calculating this is our income from employment. So our W-2 income, we're going to take the gross number. We're also going to take the gross amount from our non-employment income. And so this would be anything from Social Security, unemployment. In California, if you're getting SDI, if you're getting alimony, all of that, you'd want to have it be your gross number. You're going to calculate your net number when you're talking about your self-employment income. And so that's your income from your 1099s. And that's where you're going to want to use whatever that net number is. If your self-employment income is a negative number, so if you spent more in business expenses and you have a negative number, you're just going to leave it as 0. You're not going to put negative 500. And so when we're looking at that, in order to calculate our total household income, what we are looking at is every member of the household needs to do this, and then you'd add all of those up to get your total household income. So you would have your gross annual income from your W-2 employment, your gross income from your non-employment, and then your net self-employment. And then you add those up to get your total household income. So if myself and a colleague want to live together, we both would need to do this and then add ours together to get our total household income for that unit, because that's the number that we would want to be looking at and what the building would be looking at for when we're applying to see if we income qualify. And so, as I said, that gets a little difficult for if you're an episodic earner or episodic income. So for self-employment and income that is episodic, there's 2 alternative ways to calculate the income. You can do a historic tax income. So you would be averaging 3 years of historic tax income to get an idea of what your total household income would be. Or you can look at your current year projection. And so your projected income would be, it's November right now, so you could do it, but let's say it's June and I've made $30,000. I can annualize that and say, I'm likely going to make $60,000 unless I know that I have a booked show coming up or booked work. I would want to include that. But this is also not the time to get really excited to think I'm going to book all of this work and I don't want to overestimate what it might be, because that might kick me out of an available unit if I'm over that. So you want to try to be as realistic and close to what it might be as possible. And so typically, this is something that I would say from June on, my colleague also does for a lot of clients, is look at what have we made thus far, and then can we annualize that to get a current year projection when we're filling out these applications. And the reason for this is that when the applications are getting filled out, they're going to be asking you for your income. And so we need to have an idea of how to locate that, how to get those numbers to successfully fill out these applications. And so as far as documentation to verify the income, typically what you would want to know how to locate, we're really big advocates of kind of keeping things, have a clear plastic folder, and just keep these in a folder somewhere in your house or in your apartment, in your home, just so that you know how to access it, you know where it is. Because if a unit becomes available and you want to apply very quickly, you would already have all of this information ready at hand. And so what I would typically keep on hand would be copies of my last 6 pay stubs from my current job, copies of last year's 1099s, W-2s. If that's included in your tax return, then I would just be keeping your tax return. I would be keeping them for the past 3 years if you're also doing that historic 3-year projection. And so whether that's, you keep it in the cloud or a hard copy, just know how to access it. And then if you are someone who's getting paid cash, know how to access proof of those cash payments. So whether that's your bank statement, or I know it's getting more popular to get paid through Venmo or PayPal, just know how to access that, because you're going to want to be able to access that in a timely manner if you're applying for an affordable unit. And so just when we're looking at that historic tax return, just to show an idea, this image is from 2017. What this is telling us, right, is that line 7 is our W-2 income, right? So that's our gross income. Line 12 is our business income or our 1099 income. So this is an easy way, if you are looking historically, you can add up line 7 and line 12, and then that would be giving you those two incomes. Now, let's say you're receiving alimony, right? You'd also be adding in that alimony from line 11, pensions, things like that. But line 22 is what we should be looking at. This should be the summary of everything added up. And so there is a way to look at your tax return to kind of help calculate whatever that total household income would be. And historically, I think we'd still be going back 2017, 18, 19, because we haven't done 2020 yet. So this would be something to be looking at, would be that 1040 form from your 2017 tax return. For 2018, it would be very similar. It's a little bit different. But so line 1 up here in red would be your W-2 gross income. And in 2018, like I said, it's a little bit different. So when we see here on line 6 on our 1040 form, line 6 is with everything added up. But we want to know, what's my 1099 income? What's my other income that I would be calculating? That's where you'd be looking at a Schedule 1 in 2018. If you see line 12, that's going to be your 1099 income or your business income. And again, if line 12 is negative $500, you're just going to put 0 when you're calculating your total household income. Also, if you did receive unemployment in that year, on line 19, you'd be seeing that unemployment number that you'd also be including in that total household income. For 2018, this is really just a check and balance. This is your Schedule C, your profit or loss, your 1099 income. It's just, if you want to check and balance it, you can also look at your Schedule C. But going back, if you have your Schedule 1, your business income would be here as well. So it's just a check and balance if you want to make sure that the numbers do add up. So when we talk about assets, when looking at affordable housing, assets are going to be taken into consideration, but it's important to know that there's such a little bit of income from assets that is going to be added to your household income, to where if you are a homeowner, that doesn't mean that you would never be able to also rent an affordable apartment, because the assets from the assets have such a small amount impact. But if you're very close, so let's say I believe the 100% AMI for, I want to say one person might have been $78,000. I'm not sure, but let's just say if I'm at 77, I definitely would want to be looking at my assets and see if that would push me over or not, right? Just because if I'm close, this is something good. So really what the assets are looking at is that anything with a cash value. So this does include my bank accounts, my investments, if I have property. If you are invited in for an interview, typically you are going to need to document your assets during the interview. So you'd be, again, bringing in your bank accounts, maybe bringing in that information about your assets. And so, as I mentioned, what the buildings or the developers or the managers would be using is something called a tenant income certification form, or a TIC form. And so this is where they are getting what amount of household income would be coming from your assets. And so as you can see, the rate that it's getting multiplied by is 0.06%. So it's not a lot that's going to be added to your total household income from assets, but it is something to consider if you're someone who has a lot of assets. And so again, this could be, right, if I'm household member number 1 and I have my, Bank of America checking account number 1, what's in that account, and then I would be able to get my total income from assets by doing this form. The developers that I've spoken with on other projects, they would do this form on their own end when they're reviewing your application to kind of see where that lies. But again, this is something really great to know on your own end, just to be aware of where you lie in that area median income and the units available. So just a little bit more on the documentation to verify assets. What you'd want to be able to, again, know how to access is, let's say, 6 months of your most recent consecutive bank statements with all your accounts. So if you have a checking account and a savings account, know how to access that, know your password, know how to log in. This is all great to kind of make sure that you have this information organized so that, again, when you are applying, this hopefully having everything organized, knowing how to access it will increase your chances in successfully applying. If you have a pension, you would need to know how to access your pension information, your statements, again, investment accounts. If you have mutual funds, retirement accounts, stocks, bonds, know what's in them, know how to access that. And again, if you do own property, right, you'd want to be bringing in a copy of your mortgage statement, maybe your homeowner's insurance, your property tax bills, that information. On the letters that I have seen when I have had clients invited in for an interview, typically the letters that I've seen really tell you what to bring in. And they explain, this is what we're looking for. Here's your date and time of the interview. And here's what we need you to bring to the interview to continue with this verification process. So outside of income qualifying, there can be other tenant selection criteria. And so each developer might have different thresholds when they have their tenant selection criteria. And so they could be looking at housing court history, bankruptcy, delinquencies, your credit score, criminal background. What is not allowed to be used as criteria, right, is gender, race, sexual orientation. The protected factors, the protected classes are not part of tenant selection criteria. But if you have a felony, you might be automatically rejected. If you have a misdemeanor, maybe not. And this is going to change again, building to building. So you do want to be looking at, when you're applying, you want to be reading that application packet that is going over, here's our tenant selection criteria, here's, our income, here's what units we have available. If you have bankruptcy, sometimes that building may not accept someone who has bankruptcy, right? So you want to be really looking at what the building would accept. So that way you're not wasting your time filling out the application, pulling all this information. If it clearly states already that maybe you and your family or you individually would not qualify based on this other selection criteria. So just something to keep in mind when we are looking at those application packets. And so, as I mentioned, credit score is one of this selection criteria. The Actors Fund recommends either looking at the annual credit report or using Credit Karma. I know that there's a lot of different ones, and I think a lot of times, depending on what bank you have, what credit card, you can actually access your FICO score very easily. But if you don't know what it is and you need to know what it is, these are two places. The Credit Karma is one place. As far as the credit report, if you have an outstanding loan on your credit report and you know that you want to be applying for affordable housing in 6 months, run your credit report, see if there's anything that you can clean up, or if there's any errors, you want to dispute them immediately to, again, increase your success in affordable housing. Before we move on, I'm going to just check the chat. Does assets include things like furniture? No. So asset would be, right, your bank account, your home itself, but furniture, no. All right. So resources and tips. So this is usually the part where if you're taking pictures of the screen, there's going to be a couple slides where there's going to be a lot of resources. I would be taking a photo of that screen to use afterwards as well. So just to kind of, obviously we're all aware of COVID-19 and what it's been doing. This is one website that does have a lot of different resources regarding affordable housing in respects to coronavirus. So there's just different resources for rental assistance, rent forgiveness, the current eviction policies, and any sort of waiting list updates. This is a great website to take a look at. It has a lot of different resources on it, so I would definitely be using this one. The other one that I would be using would be Housing Rights Center. And so Housing Rights Center, they provide information for both City of LA and LA County. They currently are doing, I believe they're doing weekly presentations on the guide to COVID-19 tenant protection. So legally, what can happen, what can't happen, the eviction moratorium. They're staying up to date on all of things related to tenant protections as it relates to COVID-19. It is a free resource. They do have a hotline. So if you are having a landlord tenant issue, you can speak to a housing counselor. You can also go to their website, email them what's going on and see what they can do to help. Their website also does have a ton of different resources as it relates to housing in general and also COVID-19. And also when we look at Housing Rights Center, when we're going to the next slide, right here, this Housing Rights Center's rental list. Oops, let me just go back. The Housing Rights Center's rental list. This gets updated about monthly. And so this is, again, something that I would take a picture of. Specifically for Housing Rights Center, every month they update on their website a list for affordable housing in Ventura County and LA County. And so what they organize it very well. And so typically there's always a section for newly added or newly developed affordable housing. And so that's typically where I would be looking. And then it's broken down by city. So if you live in Santa Monica specifically, you can see what's available there. This isn't every single thing, but it is a pretty hefty list. So I do really like using the Housing Rights Center's rental list to get an idea of what's coming down the pipeline in addition to some other ways. If you're also looking for housing, there's the HUD resource locator. At the county level, you have the Housing Resource Center, and then also you have a Housing Resource Center at the city level. And these are both websites where you can put in your zip code, your city, search for affordable housing. Earlier on, I stated that for that Assembly Bill 1492, that protection applies if you live in a rent stabilized unit. If you need to know if your unit is rent stabilized, if you have questions about that, you can go to the rent stabilization ordinance here, and all of that information would be available for the homeforlarenters.org. And then the city's news link provides information. They update this pretty frequently, just information that's going on regarding housing in the area. And then the next slide, we're going to talk about the developer websites. And so as I mentioned, there's not one centralized location to sign up for housing, right? It really is it's a lot of legwork. And so I would really set aside a day or two a month and kind of keep yourself updated on what is coming down the pipeline, what's in development. These are all great resources to start with. Also, when we're looking at developer websites, we can go to the specific developer websites of affordable housing and see what's coming down the pipeline. And Hollywood Housing develops a ton of affordable housing. So does TSA, Meta Housing, and the last one is the Santa Monica Corporation. And so what I would highly recommend is for TSA, make sure that you're on their mailing list. Make sure that you're subscribing. Make sure that you're on, email me with new information on this building. And again, I would be, set aside a day a month and check these websites to see what's coming down the pipeline. And I say that because once an affordable building is filled, typically not a lot of people move out. And so kind of it's a better way to look at what's coming down the pipeline so that I can be prepared and ready so that when that application goes live, I can have everything available and I'm getting notified because I've signed up for these notifications on different developer websites. Yes, Meta does have a lot of senior housing, and they have artist colonies. Their most recent artist colony, thank you, Mary, is in Santa Ana. I believe that that is actually filled, and I believe that there's a waiting list for it. They also then did an artist colony in Palmdale, which is about 60 miles north of like the Fairfax area, La Brea Tar Pits area. And so they did a huge complex there. They do develop a lot of artist housing as well, to where the artist would have preference. So if I'm applying as an artist, my application would get viewed before a non-artist. So it's another way to really help artists get affordable housing. So to go over some things when we are applying for affordable housing, just some common pitfalls that I see pretty frequently is not following up in a timely manner. If you are mailed something, emailed, phone called, make sure that you are contacting that person back, because typically if they don't hear from you, there's a waiting list and they're gonna contact the next person. So you wanna make sure that you are setting up that interview if invited to come in, providing the requested documentation on time. If you are applying and you get a negative response, meaning that that you did not qualify for some reason for the apartment, you can appeal that decision. When you get that letter that says no, typically it will tell you you have X amount of days to appeal. I believe the last property for Meta was 14 days. And if you didn't appeal within 14 days, there was really no recourse to take. And so you want to be reading everything very closely to make sure that you're doing things within that time frame. One thing that we see a lot is leaving sections of the application blank, or a lot of applications that I've seen, you initial a lot of the bottom pages and it's really easy to miss. And so you really want to make sure that you're signing everything, not leaving anything blank. If it doesn't apply, I'd be on the safe side and just put not applicable, just to make sure that it's getting filled in. Some more common pitfalls would also be, right, not having that documentation of your income in order. And this is where, again, we would recommend just having something, whether if you're using like Dropbox or a cloud or hard copies of something, know where everything is, know how to access it. If you need help with taxes, I would be contacting tax professionals. I can refer a couple for anyone interested. If you are invited in for an interview, please make sure that all household members show up for that interview. So, if it's me and a colleague, we both need to be at that interview. And then pretty self-explanatory, right? But if you are giving false information or leaving something out of the application, that's not going to work in your favor, because typically they are running a background check. So they're going to be checking specific information. So as I've said, get organized, create a file for your documents, know what your credit score is, know kind of that idea. I would say determine what your annual median income level is, so that you can get an idea of what you would be eligible for based on your income and your household size. And then I would also be checking affordable housing advertisements in your local papers. Make sure that you're getting on those wait lists and those interested parties lists. Those are really great. I myself sign up for them just so that I can stay informed. And they do email you once they have something. Sometimes it's a little while out, but if you do sign up, you will get emailed once the project has movement. And so to give you specifically through the Actors Fund, so we do have, as I mentioned at the beginning, our Housing Resource Center. You can sign up for our email list, you can subscribe. Anytime that I hear of an opportunity, I blast that out to everyone subscribed. You would be subscribing on our website, actorsfund.org. We also have a bulletin board. So if anyone is looking for a place to post, let's say you have a room to rent, you need a room to rent, it's free to post on our bulletin board for that information. And we have a whole host of other services that you can always check out at our website. And before we go to opportunities, let me just check the chat. I saw that I had a couple. Okay, those are good. So for Meta, what I would do is go to their website, and then I would actually be going building by building. And if the building is built on their website, it should tell you who the management company is, and I would be contacting the management company. If you have a specific question, I would, Mary, just say email me at the very top of the chat. You'll get my email. Just email me, and I'm happy to reach out to Meta on your behalf to kind of see what's going on. So for opportunities, I just wanted to start with, if anyone isn't familiar, the Community Corporation of Santa Monica. It is a Santa Monica-based nonprofit organization. They increase and improve Santa Monica's affordable housing stock. They've restored over 1,000 units, and they have built almost 700 new affordable units. So there's just under 1,700 total units of affordable housing. If this is something where you're looking how to access it, their website, santamonica.gov/housing need housing, or you can just do a Google search, Community Corporation of Santa Monica. That would lead you to that same place as well. But this would be a good place specifically if you're looking in that area for what's coming down the pipeline, what resources are available, and how to access them. And so a little bit more. So beginning this year, the housing opportunity list for the Community Corporation of Santa Monica is managed by the City of Santa Monica. So they do have an open wait list for their below market housing program. You would just go to santamonicahousing.org. And on their website, it will tell you what these numbers are, right? So a 1-person household, 2-person household. And again, this is kind of where we want to be looking at, okay, if I know that my household of 3 people earns more than this, right, I may not qualify. So that's where kind of understanding what that total household income is really helps us succeed, is knowing that I can, this is worthwhile applying. The one thing that I definitely would say is don't self-select yourself out. So if you're not sure, if there's a question, I wouldn't self-select out, because I wouldn't want anyone to lose out on an opportunity that maybe you were absolutely eligible for. A project coming down the line, I know this is a little bit further, the anticipated completion is the end of 2021, but it is Vista Bologna. This is also through Community Corporation of Santa Monica. It's going to be in Mar Vista, so you can see the exact address. It's going to be 50 1- and 2-bedroom units, and their units are going to be the 30 to 60% AMI, right? So if we're going back to that chart, we're going to see, so if I know that I'm at the 80% AMI level, maybe this isn't the opportunity for me. But if I fall within that 30 to 60% range, absolutely, this would be something that I really want to be looking into. In this building, there are going to be supportive services provided by Brilliant Corners. So that's just another layer of services that are going to be provided for eligible tenants. And so this is, again, where if we go back a slide, because this opportunity is through the city officials and the Community Corporation of Santa Monica, I would be looking at that Community Corporation of Santa Monica website to kind of stay up to date, see if there's an interested parties list that you can sign up for to make sure that you're staying in the know for the upcoming opportunities. This one is specific to our seniors. So Gramercy Place Apartments currently has an open application window. This is in Los Angeles, so it's not necessarily the west side, but I wanted to include it because it's open right now, and the application closes on December 1st. And so Gramercy Place is defining senior as 55 plus. Sometimes apartments are defining that as 62 plus, 65 plus. This one specifically is going to be 55 plus, and there's 64 units available. This apartment, again, is going to be looking at the 60% AMI or below. So you want to be looking at, if I'm a household of 1 person, let me get an idea of what my what my household income is and see if this is a good opportunity. You can actually download the rental application right now from their website. This is actually through Hollywood Housing. So you can download that application, you can take a look at it, you can read through it, see if it's something that would be good for you to apply for. On that application, there should be their specific units and the maximum household income for those units, and see if you qualify. And I would be looking at that application directly. And that would be on Hollywood Housing. And then just to take a look at, Gramercy Place did post this on their website. So if you're looking at up to 60% of AMI for a 2-person household, my maximum could be $54,060. And so this is just this is what's posted on their website right now. I would be looking at their application. And then what I would also be looking at is, for a 2-person bedroom, how many people are they saying need to live in that unit? And I say that because on a project that I recently worked on for a 2-bedroom, it had to be 3 to 5 people. And the building set that. So 3 people had to live in a 2-bedroom. You couldn't have 2 unless there was a special accommodation that took place and you could show that. But so I would be looking at what is the occupancy standard for a 2-person up to a 5-person unit. And if it's a 2-person, is that meaning a 1-bedroom? Is that a 2-bedroom? This is where the application is going to tell you that information. The last opportunity that I have would be the Palm Vista apartment. This is also through Hollywood Housing. This is going to be in Winnetka, so this is the Valley area. But this will be 35 units will be set aside for low-income households, and this is going to be 50% or lower AMI. So this is why it's, again, so important to understand slightly what your income is, because when you're looking at application, I would want everyone to understand an idea of where they're at so they can successfully apply for housing. This did not have, that I saw on the website, a anticipation date. But again, this is also why I would be joining those interested parties list, subscribing to any sort of newsletter for the developers, so that way when the information comes, you're getting notified. Partly what I've seen from other apartment or other buildings is that being notified early on and knowing of what's coming down the pipeline is really helpful in increasing your chances of successfully moving into an affordable apartment, because usually there's a lot of people who want affordable housing, and there's a specific number of units available. So it's something to definitely make sure that you are staying up to date with that information. In just a moment, I am going to switch gears over to Venice Community Housing. I did just want to take a moment. So Venice Community Housing is also another great organization. They have 2 group homes for transition-aged youth. That would be 18 to 24. That's a partnership with SPY. They also currently have 1 property under construction that's going to offer 35 permanent homes, again, for transition-aged youth. They also have 3 different properties in the pipeline that are going to be located in Venice that will provide permanent housing for families, low-income artists, etc. And so if you're looking at viewing new developments, new properties, what the programs are, you would want to visit vchcorp.org. And in a moment, we'll have someone else speak specifically about an opportunity through Venice Community Housing. So just to wrap up, for the Actors Fund, we do currently own 4 different affordable housing buildings. We own one in West Hollywood called the Palm View. The Palm View is specifically funded for anyone living with a permanent disability or HIV/AIDS. If that applies to you, please give us a call. I'm happy to transfer that to the supervisor of that department. And we also are currently in pre-development for a different affordable building that will be located in Hollywood. And so when more developments come of that, I'm happy to share them. That's also where I would be subscribed to the Actors Fund housing updates, because when I get the information, I would then send it out to anyone who's subscribed on that mailing list. And I did just want to say thank you. For anyone who doesn't know, Daniel Arno is the director of this Affordable Housing Initiative, and then he works in our New York office. I work in our LA office. If anyone does have any specific questions, please feel free to email me. My email is right here, cmargliano@actorsfund.org. Email me, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And let me just check the chat very quickly. All right. I do want to introduce Linda, so I'm going to pause on answering these just for a moment. And while I do that, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen and then share a different screen. But Linda Lux is from Venice Community Housing. She is also on the board of Venice Mar Vista Arts Coalition. And so she's going to be talking about an opportunity through Venice Community Housing. While I just stop sharing that screen, and I'm going to reshare a presentation. And we will just.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Linda Lux. Thank you so much, Cody. It was a very interesting and informative presentation. I am going to speak to you. Could we have the first slide really quickly? Oh, it's going forward. It's not. Go back. Okay. Oops. Okay. So I lost mine. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Can't find it. Can you give me the screen again with my.
Do you see it?
No, I just see myself.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah. Let me stop my share again. Let me reshare that for you.
So Venice Community Housing is a 32-year-old, almost 33-year-old nonprofit housing developer in Venice. We have 17 properties in Mar Vista, Del Rey, Venice, and one in Westwood. Most of our properties are for permanent housing. The two group homes for youth, I still don't see my screen.
I'm pulling it up right now.
Oh, okay. I thought it was up and I don't. Anyway, so we have 17 properties, as I said, and the vast majority are for permanent. Once you're in, you're in. Some of them serve people who were homeless before they moved in, and then they're not homeless anymore. Most of them are there we go, are just low-income people. And we do have 3 properties that are for transitional housing for youth and one for homeless moms and their kids. One where I want to talk to you about is proposed to include housing for artists. It's called in Venice. It's called the Reese Davidson Community. It's going through the city permit process now, and believe it or not, there's opposition. I don't know why. It's on city-owned property. The city put up a lot of its property in the wake of Prop HHH, and there's thousands, and like 7,000 units that are in the pipeline to be built under Prop HHH. This is one of them. It's named after 2 people and Gregory Hines. One is Rick Davidson on the left. He is one of the founders of Venice Community Housing, and architect. And the man in the middle is Arthur Reese, one of the founders of Venice, who worked for Abbott Kinney and actually designed all of the original Venice rides, et cetera, the public spaces, and was the first Black homeowner in Venice. So it's named after him. And the person on the right is Gregory Hines, famed dancer, singer, actor, wonderful person who moved to Venice in the 70s to start a rock band. That didn't work out, but we had a great time. As my era. We had a really great time when he was playing 5 nights a week at a local place. Then he made it in the movies and had a TV show and went to Broadway. And I don't know if you saw any of his Broadway plays. Really good guy, but he always kept a place in Venice and is beloved there. Can I see the next slide, please? Okay, this is the property. As I said, it's almost, I didn't say, it's a city-owned property. It's almost 3 acres. It's a current surface parking lot. What you see is what it looks like now. The canal runs through the middle on the left slide. That's what it looks like. And if you're looking south, the bridge is there, and then you go over Venice Boulevard south, and the rest, you're in the canals. The canal actually starts at the bottom of the slide, which is North Venice Boulevard. So what we're planning to build is 2 parking structures, because the parking must stay It's beach parking. And can you do the next slide? Thanks. And it's going to build two buildings, well, two parking structures, one on either side of the canal. And our apartments will wrap around the outside of the two properties. And the middle part will be the expanded canal area, and there'll be the Gregory Hines Arts Center, Community Arts Center you see on the left, for performances, galleries, workspace for the tenants and the public. And on the right side, there'll be coffee shops. We want to do enterprise, like Homeboy Industries type building. I forget the word, something enterprise, a business enterprise where people can really pick themselves up and have businesses. That's our plan. And then there's more retail on Pacific Avenue, sort of catty corner from where Canal Club used to be. Next slide, please. This is looking from the north, from the south, looking north on the side of the building. And this just shows the elevations. The ground floor will be all indented, but that's where the artist spaces will be. A lot of live work spaces where the sides can come up. And there will be a lot of art brought to the buildings. We'll put murals on. It's going to be an arts oriented building. And the ground floor is where a lot of it's going to take place. And then the residents are upstairs. Okay, next one. Oh, I didn't say how many. So there's going to be, wait, go back please for a minute. 140 units, 68 for people who are experiencing homelessness when they move in, 34 set aside for artists, because we can do that and everyone in Venice asked for it. 34 for low-income households, and low-income households can include artists. So artists can apply are eligible for all of the units, but 34 are specifically for artists. And there'll be four full-time property management staff, 2 in each building. And then on-site services will have professional social workers, community rooms, office space for tenant services and public activities. And also in the Arts Center, we'll have a lot of arts, health, and wellness services on the property. Next slide. This is a view from Dell, which is where the canals come out, looking west towards the beach. And remember, the interiors are parking structures for beach parkers on the weekend. And then the apartments is called a Texas Wrap or wraparound. Be lots of open space. We want it to really come alive and be there for the public. Next, please. Okay, so as I said, the public parking will be preserved. We're going to add to the parking that's there, both for additional beach impact parking and there'll be between 38 and 120 absolutely new parking. And the reason it's varied is that the city is discussing doing automated parking, which means you can put a lot more cars in. They haven't decided yet. So it depends on what the city decides, because they will operate the parking. It's city parking and they will keep the revenue, et cetera. And then there'll be private parking for the residential and added parking for the commercial. And the Arts Center will be 3,100 square feet of multi-purpose art uses, and micro enterprise. I couldn't think of micro, for people doing job development and in the commercial space, and the ground floor patio. And then the bridge that goes over the canals will be preserved and enhanced. Next, please. The density, people say, think it's too big, but it's actually 2 and 3 stories. We could build 45 apartments, but we're up to 195 apartments. We're building 140. The floor area ratio is limited to 1.5 to 1. We're doing 1.17 to 1, so much lower than we could do. The 35 height limit is what is allowed. We're going to do 25 to 35. It'll be varied roof lines. And so it won't be one big, too big, actually, all flat boxes. And the surrounding buildings all around that are up to 4 stories. They go from 1 to 4 stories. So it's a varied roof line. It fits right in the middle. Next, please. This is a view on, sorry, South Venice Boulevard, looking towards the beach. And you can see where there'll be places for artists to work, and we'll bring in other art. We'll have competitions for murals, et cetera. It's going to be really, really a wonderful place. Okay, next slide. Cody. Okay, there we go. This shows where there's supportive housing in the city of LA now. Most of it is going in with proper HHH. In the middle of the city, you can see the yellow. The bottom left is Santa Monica, which has a lot, and Venice, which currently has 42. With this, there'll be a total with all the other developments in Venice for supportive housing. There'll be, keep going, next slide. There'll be, oh, we missed that. Okay, there'll be 173 up from 42. So it's not too much. This is the projected timeline. We started the government approval process, which should end by the spring. So that's pretty cool. And then we start construction. So we're a few years out, but we're moving. Next slide, please. Anyway, that's Venice Community Housing. What I would love is the people on this program would support us. I have a letter of support. I have a blank letter that's fillable that Cody's going to put in the chat. If you would be so kind as to fill it out and return it and send it back to me. Also in the chat is my phone number and my email address if you have any questions. I wish I could say this was in construction, but it could be sooner than later if we get a lot of the community support and public support saying, yes, do this, we need it. We need as much artist housing as we can. So our wait list is closed. It's going to be being considered open soon. This will be announced when it's ready to be announced, and there'll be a way if you get on the list to be informed as to when it's going to be available for rent. And it will probably be by lottery. Like if you sign up and get, you win big, you'll get in the lottery. If not, that seems to be the fairest way to do it. And that's it. And I thank you for your time. Please look in the chat. And my name is Linda Lux. You can call me anytime with questions. And if you are so moved, please return a letter. If you don't catch it on the chat, which I didn't see, I can send it to you later. There it is. You can just click on it and it's fillable online. You don't have to print it out or anything unless you choose to. So thank you, Cody. Thank you, Lenore, for the time. And I hope some of you get to move in on any of the developments, but certainly ours if you still need housing in a few years. Thank you.
Linda, we have a question from Mary. What size bedrooms will there be for the Reese Davidson property?
There'll be studio 1 and 2.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. All right. So let me just go through. If anyone has any specific questions, email me. There is one, the rapid rehousing. I honestly don't know that on top of my head. What I would suggest is email me, Mary, and then I will do some research, and then I will, if I don't know, I'll toss it to my director to see if he can share any insight with me. And I think that's it. So if anyone does have any questions, just send me an email or send Linda an email if you have a question for Linda. And truly such a huge thank you to Lenore, who hosted this entire presentation.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I want to thank you, Cody, again, and also Linda, and my co-founder, Sunny, who's still hiding. But I just wanted to thank everyone. I hope you found the workshop helpful. And there, again, we'll post it on our YouTube channel for the Venice Mar Vista Arts Coalition. So I believe at the very beginning of the chat, I put that in the chat, as well as if you're interested in joining our organization, once again, you can do that by direct messaging us on our Facebook page. So I just want to thank everyone for your participation, and I hope you found it useful and that you continue your search, and we are successful in our mission to keep artists on the west side of Los Angeles. And thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to bid everyone adieu.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.